Hey, in this video, I'm going to give you 5 small changes you can commit to today that will have a massive impact on your mixes forever. And the first one is to start using simpler plugins. The less knobs, the less controls, the less visual feedback, the better. So let's compare something like the SSL style EQ versus something like the FabFilter EQ. So on the FabFilter, you've got a visual graph that's showing you the frequency response, the frequency curve of the material that you're working on. It's also got a graph and curve of what EQ moves you're making and how that's impacting the waveform view, right? And you've got all of these extra controls and numbers and settings. Versus on something like the SSL channel, it's just some knobs that you turn and listen, right? It's just frequency, booster, cut. That's it. Or with compressors, take something like an LA3A plugin with just 2 knobs versus something like the FabFilter compressor. Now, I have nothing against FabFilter. I think they make amazing high quality tools. And I know a lot of friends who, their EQ and compressor are their favorite ones. So nothing against FabFilter at all, but I'm just contrasting here, right? Again, with the FabFilter compressor, or even a stock compressor in Pro Tools or other DAWs, look at how many knobs and controls are. Look at the visual feedback. There's so many ways to screw this up versus something like an LA3A or even 1176, there's just a couple knobs, right? And there's not all of this complicated stuff being thrown in front of your face. And if you've watched any other videos on my channel, you probably know that I lean heavily towards these simpler plugins without any kind of visualizer feedback involved. And I think this helps you for a few reasons. Number one, you're gonna make better decisions. So it's been proven that of all of our senses, vision holds the most weight. This means that we make decisions primarily based on what we see. So think about how many times this has happened for you. You're listening to a sound, you're mixing, and you think, okay, this could use some extra top end, I think. So you load up an EQ plugin, and then boom, you've got this waveform visualizer in front of you. And so right away you're like, well, it looks like there's a little dip there in the mids. So let me just focus on that for a second and see if I need to fix that. Or maybe there's a spike over here and you're like, maybe that's harsh. Maybe that's a problem. I need to tame that frequency area and adjust that. And before you know it, you've made all of these moves that had nothing to do with what you initially heard. You just wanted to add some top end, but now you've gone and done all this other stuff based purely on what you've seen. And to really put this bluntly, this is the equivalent to like closing your eyes and painting a picture by listening. That's really dumb. And secondly, if you remove all of this visual noise, you're not going to second guess yourself so much, which is such a huge problem for so many mixers I talk to. And the reason you second guess yourself is because stuff looks weird or it looks different than maybe another mix you're comparing to. And so for me, when I used to use kind of this classic visualizer graph style of EQ plugins, I would never make big enough EQ moves because let's just face it, when you boost 15 dB on an EQ like that, it kind of looks crazy, right? The line graph is like all over the place and you're like, whoa, that can't be right. Versus the SSL channel EQ, you just crank that knob, even if it goes all the way maxed out at plus 15, you don't really get freaked out that much because it's just a knob. And it's weird, I don't know why our brains work like that, but it's just easier to not get freaked out when you don't have all of these crazy graphs and lines going on. And not only that, you'll actually become a better mixer over time without all that visual feedback because you'll actually be listening and training your ears and making decisions solely based on what you hear, not on what you see, and then hearing the impact of those decisions, and that's gonna make you better. And because of all these things, making better decisions, not second guessing yourself, training your ears better, you're gonna also mix faster. So it has this cascading set of benefits. And I believe in this so much that I built an entire plugin company based on this philosophy. Like, look, we built a de-esser with only 2 controls, a clipper with only 2 controls. We made the best drum gate out there with only 3 knobs, right? And we have a saturation plugin that people absolutely love. It's only got 1 knob. Well, I guess plus an output level 2, but you get the point. And by the way, this is just how the pros think, right? It's not what's the most I can do, it's what's the least I can do and how fast can I get to the finished result that I want. All right, the second tip is to mix on what you like listening on. So I've always found this weird irony with studio monitors and studios in general, because before we become mixers and audio engineers, we spend our whole lives enjoying music, listening to music everywhere but a pro studio environment, right? We're in our cars, listening on headphones and things like that. We're basically enjoying music, soaking in music, spending thousands and thousands of hours listening on all these different devices, and we become really attuned to them. We become experts on how music sounds in all these different environments, or really just a few specific environments. And then we decide we want to mix music, and then we come and listen on completely different speakers in a completely different environment and try to make decisions like that instead. Like it really doesn't make that much sense. So what this comes down to is that there are certain devices that you just know instinctively what a pro finished record, a pro mix should sound like, just because of the sheer number of hours you've spent listening on that device in that environment. And for most people, including myself, this used to be the car. This is where the car test came from. It's not because there's something special about the speakers or the car environment. It's just because you've spent so many hours in there listening to music, it's really easy to spot the problems with your mix. But for me these days, that's kind of transitioned to being AirPods. Okay, this is what I spend most of my time listening to music on, whether I'm out for a walk, doing dishes, I'm cutting the grass. I'm listening to these things, and it's got to the point where I've spent so many hours on these that I know instinctively what a good mix should sound like. And so for the last 2 years or so, rather than just checking my mix at the end with the AirPods, I've actually started mixing on them in real time. And this has been a total game changer. It's so easy to make decisions and tweak the mix in real time and not have to, kind of bounce it out of the studio, go listen, then come back. I can do it right then. I can make the adjustments. And plus, being AirPods, the room acoustics are out of the question, which makes it even better. Now, I don't recommend doing 100% of your mixing on headphones or earpods. I think it's possible, it's just not ideal. For me, it's just a second reference that I lean on pretty heavily. So I'll maybe spend about 30% of my total mixing time with the AirPods in. And for me, the NS10 or CLA10 plus AirPod combo is amazing, because the NS10s really force you to focus on the mid-range of the mix, the meat that's important, that really translates without all of that, extra rumbly sub lows or the extended, sparkly high end. They don't give you that, so you really just focus on what matters. But then when you do need to check the extended lows and the extended highs, you pop the AirPods in. The room acoustics are totally a non-factor, and if you're used to them, it's very easy to make those decisions about the lows and the highs. And to me, that makes way more sense than like a $5,000 pair of studio monitors that you have barely listened to and that no one else out there in the real world has listened to either. So find a way to bring your number one music listening device into your mix process itself. Tip number 3 is to stop mastering your own mixes. Now, I know there's a debate about this, and I know there are a lot of big name mixers out there that are mastering their own stuff, and they do it really well. But if you're not a big name and you're not an absolute expert, I don't think you should be doing this, because you're gonna miss out on a lot of benefits. There's a really good domino effect here. Because number 1, they're gonna make your mix louder, so it's competitive in the real world without ruining your mix. So that's a win. By the way, I'm talking about a good mastering engineer delivering a good master, okay? That's a given with all these points I'm gonna make. And not only do they make your mix louder, they're actually gonna make your mix sound better, which is another huge win. Like for me, I love getting a good master back because it literally makes me sound like a better mixer. And so that gives me more confidence. It makes the clients happier, which means they're gonna spread the word about me even more. So again, it's a huge win. But not only does it make you seem better, it actually makes you better, because you get to have some expert outside ears listen to your mix and adjust it, tweak it, send it back to you, and you can hear that and compare it to your mix to be like, these are the problems that I didn't even notice were there, but this person caught them and they've adjusted it, they've fixed it, they've enhanced it, they've made my mix better. And you can really point out, especially over time, the patterns of specific ways that they're doing this. And for me, I noticed a pattern over years that, almost every time I get my mix mastered, they've really beefed up the low end and the low mids specifically. So that's probably a weakness in my mixes, and I'm gonna try and see what I can do to make that even better before I send it out to mastering. So when you repeatedly get to hear your work improved upon by 5 or 10 or 15% again and again and again, you're gonna get better. And it's really hard to improve, or at least to improve quickly, when you're completely on your own, only working on your own material without any outside expertise being applied at all. You're just completely blind to your faults. And I've even heard of pro mixers who will go out and pay for a master while they're mixing an album, pay for a master of one song, get it back, and based on that, they'll go back and actually adjust their mix to improve it before they go ahead and send out for the final master. Small change number 4 is rapid referencing. So using reference tracks while you're mixing is absolutely crucial, but reference tracks can also start to become a major distraction and a huge enemy to your mix. Now, the purpose of reference tracks is to provide you with an overall ballpark sense and calibrate your ears. That's the purpose of them, right? You just want to know, do I have roughly the right amount of low end and mid range and high end compared to all these other finished records? But a lot of people are referencing the wrong way, and one of those ways you reference wrong is to use only one song. So if you're just choosing one song to reference your mixes against, well, what's going to happen is you're going to start to obsess over that one sound, that one song, right? And instead of using it as an overall ballpark to just be like, okay, do I have enough brightness? Do I have enough low end? You're going to start to mangle all of your sounds and try to make it copy that one mix. And when you do that, you're kind of missing the point of mixing, because really mixing, you're trying to take the tracks and the raw material that you have, find out what's special, what's good about it, what are the problems, and you want to smooth over those problems, help fix them, but also really enhance what's there, right? What's special, make it better, and really just bring what's there to the next level. The point is not to take what's there and then totally change it to copy one other mix. Another mistake with referencing is listening to your reference tracks for too long. Again, because you start to get obsessed over these minute details instead of just the overall picture. And one more way people get referencing wrong is they leave it way too late, right? They'll spend hours and hours on a mix till they finally think, okay, it's almost done. Now I'm going to compare it to a reference track. But that's too late. I mean, that's like building an IKEA bookshelf for like 2 hours and it's not quite sturdy. And so finally, after 2 hours, you go back and open up the instruction book. Well, it's going to be pretty hard to go back and fix the mistake that you made on step 1. And so usually you're just not going to do it. You're just going to find some band-aid solution. So instead of all of that, use what I call rapid referencing. And what this looks like is just choosing 3, 4, maybe 5 different songs and just listening to a few seconds of each song, like literally 2 or 3 seconds of each song, bouncing back and forth between a bunch of different references you like, and then immediately flipping back to your own mix. And you want to do this before you start mixing at all, so that you get your ears calibrated to the right ballpark so you know roughly what you're aiming at. And then you do it again periodically throughout the mix and at the end. And that way you're going to make sure you don't go way off track before you even realize it. And the final change I want you to make in your mixes is to always finish your mix with automation. And automation is a step that most amateurs either skip entirely or really skimp out on it. And so many students in my paid program point to automation as one of the big aha moments and turning points in their mixing.
Another one of the biggest things that surprised me was the whole section of automation.
When you started explaining, Jordan, the automation on the cymbal hits, my mind blew. I'm like, that's how they did it. That's how they did it.
Watching the automation, all of that has just been like, I don't know how to explain it, but that's just been eye-opening for me.
So automation is the final step for my mixes, right? I get a static mix that's sounded pretty good, that I'm pretty confident in, but then I start tweaking things and riding the faders section by section, track by track. You know, the kick, the snare, the toms, the overheads, of course the bass and guitar and the vocals. And what I'm doing is I'm emphasizing dynamics and I'm emphasizing the impacts. And this goes beyond just volume. You know, sometimes it's changing EQs throughout a song or changing compressors, definitely effects, you know, having different amounts of reverb and delay happening on different words or different lines or different sections of the song. And I want to take the big parts and make them bigger. I want to take the soft parts and make them softer. You know, I want to bring out all of those special details that are in the music and make things jump out of the speaker to really grab the listener's attention and create that essential contrast and movement that keeps pulling the listener forward and pulling them into the song. And when I say amateurs avoid this, like that was me once upon a time. I used to purposely avoid doing any automation because it felt like such a hassle, but it's not a hassle, right? It's absolutely essential. And actually it's fun. Like, this is your time to shine. This is your performance. This is how you bring the track to life. And, you know, it's just like Slash is going to play the national anthem differently than Eric Clapton. Even though it's the same song and the same notes, their feel, their style, their energy is going to be completely different. And in a similar way, automation is a major part of how you bring you to the mix, your uniqueness, how you're hearing the music, and how you kind of perform the mix. And this is a huge part of what makes big name mixers, great. So those are 5 small changes that you can actually make in your mixing process today. And I promise you, these are gonna make you a better mixer for the rest of your life. Now, there's actually one other tip that I didn't include in this video, but it definitely fits in this whole idea of things. So to find out what it is, go ahead and watch this video next. It's called Always Do This First When Mixing.